The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 505.
I'm back! Oh, also, trick-taking games.
Yay! Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Tom is back, just in time to welcome this week's guest, Sara Erickson from Renegade Games. Tom, Sara, and I discuss some recent games played, answer your questions from the mailbag, and try to win some points with our top 10 trick-taking games. What is a trick-taking game anyway? We get to that too. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the dragon to my dog, Tom Vassell.
All right, folks, well, welcome back to hopefully some semblance of normality.
Hopefully.
It's just, yeah. So, well, at least that's the benefit of not doing a show on your own, is that you have people who can pick up the slack. And I said, last time I found out that my mother had died, I think, actually, I found out she was about to die. She would have died while we were recording.
Oh, my goodness.
Really good that I didn't join in that recording. But I called Rado. I woke him up 15 minutes earlier than he was going to get up, and I felt bad about that. But it's probably good I wasn't on the show anyway, because it would have been like 4 hours.
It was an extensive recording session, yes.
I'm sorry, Eric. I meant to protect you from the onslaught of words of Rado, but I wasn't able to. But hey, folks, we're back. So first things first, we should introduce our guest. I see there was a poll on our forums about it, and everyone was wrong. So today we have with us Sara Erickson, who is working with Renegade Games, and I'm actually not sure what your title is there.
Oh, well, hello, everyone. I am the Director of Sales and Marketing at Renegade.
Okay, I probably should have guessed that, actually.
That's okay.
It also said it in her email, research.
My mind kind of skims over those, like that whole paragraph at the end that people put in their emails. So, but anyway, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here. It's been I just played a Renegade game last week. Not Fuse, the sequel.
Flatline. Yes, yeah, Flatline. Exciting. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, I like games where you throw dice really fast and have a certain amount of time. That tends to be in my wheelhouse, and apparently I allow lots of patients to die. But it's a very fun game. It's like Fuse with on steroids, I think is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I do like that you get a little bit of downtime in between the rounds because they're pretty intense. So that 1 minute at a time, breaking it up like that is nice.
Right, I'm a really big fan of that. One of my favorite games, Project Elite, does the same thing. You like do everything, and then it's 2 minutes of time stuff, and then you pause, you reset, you get ready, and then you go into it again. I think I like that slightly better than the escape or Fuse methods where you just have 10 minutes and you got to get it all done.
And then that's it.
Yeah. Fuse is great for a lunch break, but if you really want to sit down and have a full game, something like Flatline with the 1 minute rounds is really nice.
So, folks, I want to remind you about a couple things. First of all, if you want to come to Dice Tower Con, you got to get on a waiting list. Sorry, it's sold out. Hooray! Okay.
Congratulations.
Yay, you can't come.
That's awesome.
It's the biggest and best 3,000 people, double the space.
Wow.
Hopefully double the games, double the exhibitors, double everything except, actually, not double Dice Tower, guys, but Eric, I need you to bring future Eric with you.
So we're both there simultaneously, yes.
All right, but so that is sold out. So what can you do? Well, you can still come to Dice Tower Cruise. All right, Dice Tower Cruise is, believe it or not, even better than Dice Tower Con.
What?
Well, I mean, you're on a boat. And there's like never-ending food, and it's all free. There's never-ending food, and the sights and sounds are beautiful. And if you want to play a game with Eric at Dice Tower Con, you have a chance. If you want to play a game with Eric on the cruise, your chances are like multiplied by 10.
It's true.
So just point that out. So if you guys want to come on that, get these while you can, because the price are going to go up each month or so. DicetowerCruise.com. Also, I want to mention a tool, tabletoptogether.com/tool.
Okay.
Anyway, I used this tool. The guy who made this site had made this tool for Essen. Do you remember that book I had at Essen?
Vaguely.
Yeah, well, what it does is you go through this tool, and it pulls up all the games that are going to be out at a convention. So he's done this for, I think, UK Games Expo, which is coming up, in Origins. So you can look at all the games, and you can click on each game and say, I want it, I must have it, it's okay, I don't want it, or whatever. And once you pick all the ones that you want, it will then organize them by where they are.
That's
wow.
awesome.
That's awesome, yeah.
Or you can organize it by publisher. So like Essen, I had Hall 1, Hall 2, Hall 3. Actually, I don't know if Origins, because it's all in one hall, so who knows.
Right.
But at Essen, it organized them by hall. And so I had this book. I printed everything out, put in a book, and I was able to make sure we didn't miss any games that way. So he's doing the same thing for UK Gaming Expo and Origins, and I want to mention it because I really think it's a cool tool.
I would also like to mention that Peter from Tabletop Together is a fantastic person. So if you were able to meet him at Essen, he's just a delight.
Bonus.
Well, hopefully he'll come to Origins because he went to all this work. Because I had asked him at Essen when I saw him, I asked him if he could do this for Gen Con. So, because Gen Con is slightly large. Hey, we got a booth at Gen Con. Mm-hmm. We are slightly closer to the doors than our booth was last year.
By like 2 or 3 rows.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice. That's always exciting.
I always look like where we are. I asked him to put us as close to the family pavilion as possible. I figured, we're family friendly and we promote families. It'd be good to be near the family pavilion.
Sure. Are we Pikachu adjacent again?
We are not. We are across from Doughnut Games. They make the really cool dice towers. They make the one that actually looks like a dice tower. I don't know if you've seen theirs. They're really big. They also sell axes and wooden axes and stuff.
Excellent.
I keep threatening to buy one. Laura has said no.
Good. It's a good rule.
Well, enough of all this. We're going to talk about... I'm trying not to flood you guys with the conventions that are coming up, because there really is too many. So let me sum up. The next one is UK Games Expo. If you're in the UK or you're coming from another country, me, Sam, and Z will all be there. We'll be there the entire time. Sam and Z both got roped into 2 separate live pandemic events.
Ooh.
I managed to avoid that, but we're doing a top 6 list because we're adding Efka and Elaine from No Pun Included. So 6 times 5 is 30.
There you go.
We're also doing a Q&A, and we're doing a live Wits and Wagers game, which is like the 4th Wits and Wagers game in a row now that I've run without Eric.
Oh, so I'm obsolete now.
I'm going to forget how to do it with you soon. Eric will join me for a Wits and Wagers game at Dice Tower Con.
Yes.
So that's coming up. And then Origins, and yes, by the way, yes, we have a show at Origins.
We do.
Yes, it's not on their event grid.
Of course.
That happens every single year. And every single year I call Origins and say, we're not on the event grid. And they say, don't worry, we'll get you on soon. And the probability of that happening is pretty low. Okay?
Oh, dear.
It's Saturday night, and it is directly after the Origins Awards. So, and I believe it's actually in our better location this year. It's in the ballroom on the first floor near the registration desk. They used to have the art show there near where the kids area used to be. Eric, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so on the first floor.
Yeah, it's a lot faster for us to walk to, frankly.
Nice.
Okay, well, that's enough of that. Let's talk about some games played. I'm going to start off with a game that I was just really surprised at and enamored with, and that is I Found It, but it's spelled E-Y-E, Found It. Now, this board, the box looked like a Where's Waldo type thing. I was like, oh, okay. Open it up. The board is actually like 4 feet long.
Whoa.
Whoa.
It's kind of thin. It's like, maybe 12 inches. Maybe it's I don't know, it's longer than that. And it has this airship, and you're flying through time. So the board's split up into different sections. Yeah, I think there's several I found it. I think I played, the one I'm talking about is like time travel or something like that. Anyway, it's split up into different time periods, and each time period shows all kinds of crazy stuff happening. So on your turn, you spin a spinner, and it tells you how far you move the ship. Or it tells you lose 1 fuel or lose 2 fuel. You don't want to, you have 10 fuel. If you lose all your fuel, you lose. You need to get to the end of this track, but this track is like 150 spaces long. I don't know. It's a really long track. And there's different spots. If you land on them, you can warp to another spot. So like your typical roll and move style game. However, there's also on the spinner, or there's also spaces on the board that are called I Found It. When you land on these, you draw a card, and that card might show a hatchet, or it might show a boat, or it might show a pig. And then everyone has 1 minute to look for as many of those things on this big giant picture as they can. You have these little plastic rings, and you put them around them when you find them. And each one that you find is how far you move on the space, but also it lets you move another spinner, which is underneath the first spinner, that changes one of the spaces on the spinner to the number of objects you found. So let's say I found 8 objects. Now, whenever the spinner hits that spot, you move 8 spaces. So it changes the value of something on the spinner.
Huh.
So that part's like really fun, right? Because it's fun for everyone to look for all these pictures. It's like a Where's Waldo thing. They're all over the place, crazy things. And there's, I think, 12 objects of each one. And I think we found all 12 once. And that was because a couple bored older sisters came by and were like, oh, look, here's an extra one. And the little kids were like, don't tell us. Okay, thanks. So this is, pretty much a kid's game. It's obviously going to be try to get there, but it's kind of interesting. It's a cooperative game, and you're working to get to the end. And sometimes when you're finding objects, you'll stop because you want to land in a certain space. So like, we found 6. That's all we want. Don't find any more. And I found that kind of interesting. But what really threw me was they give each player a special ability. And the special abilities are the kind you wouldn't expect in a kid's game. For example, one is lose 1 fuel, but then spin a spinner 3 times and pick which result you want.
Wow.
But that's kind of a tough decision for a kid to make, because you actually have to lose fuel to do that.
Yeah, interesting. It's also a little bit unusual in a cooperative game. Like, you see them in Pandemic, but usually player powers are not in co-op games, at least not to that extent.
Well, they're not usually in kids' games, is what I'm saying, or things like that make you hurt yourself to help yourself.
Yeah.
And I found that kind of intriguing. We played the first game actually without the powers, because I wasn't sure that they could handle them. And they could, but they needed to see how the game worked first. But when they were done playing, they're like, Dad, we want to keep this game, please. And so I was just very impressed by it. I found it.
So this big poster that you're looking at, is there only one of these, or are there multiple images that you can find things in?
No, it's just one, and it's not a poster, it's a board. But I would say there's maybe 80 different objects that you have to find on this board.
Okay,
and
so
you're only
memorizing
looking at maybe like 8 or 9, and it's hard to memorize. I mean, have you ever gone back and looked at a Where's Waldo book where you found Waldo in the past, and then you can't remember where he was?
Maybe, but if it was yesterday, then I might remember where he is.
Okay, fine, but I don't normally play games that close together.
Okay. First one for me is called Flip City Wilderness. This is a standalone expansion for Flip City. I didn't realize this when I bought it, but you can buy this on its own, and it is a complete set of cards you can play Flip City with, or there are rules about mixing it with the base set and any of the expansions that have come with that. But Wilderness on its own is a sort of a more wilderness-themed set of Flip City, and it's a more limited set of Flip City. The original set had, I think, 5 different cards in the array, or there was one optional card you could add. This only has 4 cards in the array that you can purchase. They're 2-sided, of course, because that's the mechanic of Flip City. And there's only one way to win in this set, and that's getting the 8 victory points on your cards. There's no sort of push or luck, play something like 15 cards or 18 cards and you win that was in the base set. Nope, it's just victory points. But there are lots of ways to make money in this set, allowing you to possibly, if you get 20 coins, you can spend those to get like 3 victory points, which could push you over the edge. I think the set, because it's so limited, forces you to do some more manipulation of your deck. You're forced to flip more of your cards. You're forced to do some more things with your discard pile, triggering powers. A couple of the cards start with those powers that are in your discard pile that you can flip a card over and get some sort of benefit. There's a lot of ways to store money in your discard pile, some that even stay out of the shuffling of your deck. So you can sort of store money up and build up your coffers a little bit and then trigger it all at once and make a big purchase or trigger those victory points. I liked them. I liked the new powers. I thought it was interesting, but on its own, it's a little limiting. I think on purpose, because you only have these few cards, you're forced to manipulate your deck a little more. I haven't yet mixed it with the base set, but I like the new set. I love Flip City to begin with, and having more cards is always a good thing. So thumbs up for me for Flip City Wilderness.
Quick question here. Would you thumb it up if it was a solo, if it was the only thing you had?
I would. I still like the mechanism.
See, I don't like this one as much. I don't like the first one. You had 2 different ways to win. This one, you only have 1 way to win.
Yep.
And this one has a lot of boring sides.
I liked some of the
by itself.
Yes, I did. Yeah. And I liked some of the card effects, choosing whether to trigger an event or you sort of charge up the cards in this set. They're meant to flip over back and forth a few times, so you can charge them up by flipping them and then trigger their ability, and then you have to charge them up again to build up. So there's a lot of build up, trigger, build up, trigger, build up, trigger in this set, which once you figure out how to use the cards and get that flow going, it's pretty fun. But because that's the point, it seems a little, there aren't as many options on individual cards. You almost have to load them and then fire them. Whereas the original set, you could sort of choose which side of the card you liked better.
All right. Well, I just wasn't as big of a fan as that, I think.
I think if you put them next to each other, the base set is still stronger. But I still love the mechanism, and this is a neat, different, it feels different than the base set, which I guess is a good thing.
So the first one on my list is the most recent one that I played, which is Great Western Trail. And this is by Stronghold, and it is an absolutely delightful game that uses deck building a little bit, but then it has a lot of other mechanisms that are pretty unusual. But I really like the art in this game. I like that you have lots of good choices that are pretty deep and lots of pre-planning to do. And yeah, have you guys played this one recently?
Oh yeah, I love this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is certainly one of the hottest games of the year for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely up there at the top of my list for several reasons, but I actually picked this one up at Essen just because it was about cows, which sounds a little bit silly, but my husband is from a cattle ranching family. He grew up with cows, so he almost didn't grab this game because it was so big and we had to carry it around with us when we were traveling after Essen, but he just thought it looked super cool, and I'm really, really glad that we did. So we've been playing that quite a bit lately and just played it this week. So it was on my list.
Yeah, this is one I think that is becoming, it's going to be, every year I look at the different games that come out and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's popular, but we're not going to talk about it in the coming years. I think you'll still see people playing Great Western Trail in the next several years.
This one has legs, I agree.
Yeah, I think that it maybe got overshadowed a little bit by Terraforming Mars, which I also absolutely love, but I think it's a little unfortunate because I maybe like this one better in some ways. And I think that just because they came out at the same time, it maybe did not get the attention that it deserved. But I think people are going to keep playing it and keep talking about it, and you'll hear even more about it over the next year.
I agree, and I like this one better than Terraforming as well. So I'm with you.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
All right, the next game I want to talk about is Problem Picnic Attack of the Ants. Now, this is a game that I like because it comes with custom dice, and that's always kind of a way to sucker me in. The dice actually are your ants. Each player is going to get some small 6-sided dice, some large 6-sided dice, and then one 12-sided die.
Ooh.
And they each, instead of pips on them, they have different ants. Now, this game is designed by Scott Alms, and the art's done by Josh Capel, who's a great artist. You know, his stuff is just fantastic. And it's from a company called Kids Table Board Games. So this game is, I think, pretty much oriented towards kids. This is the same company that did Food Fighters. I don't know if you played Food Fighters, Eric.
No.
Yeah, it's where you have food fighting each other.
Okay, yeah.
So Problem Picnic is this. What you do is you're going to put out some cards in the middle of the table that show they're different color plates with different foods on those plates. So there's 3 foods, 3 colors. And then you're going to take turns throwing dice onto this area. And then the dice will land there. And at the end of a round, after everyone's thrown their dice, whoever has the most ants on their side of the die will win each card. When you win the cards, you put them in a grid in front of you. And based on how you put them in grids, you can get different points based on the victory conditions of a game, which are random each time. Also, whoever has the most of each color in each type of food at the end of the game will get points too. So there's a majority. Now, the 3 different sizes of dice matter because the closest game for me to compare this to is a little bit like tumbling dice, you know, because you can knock other people's dice off and stuff. But the little dice, the little 6-sided dice, they have only 1 or 2 ants on them. When you throw them, they're not very useful, but if you miss, you can rethrow them. The big ants, well, they're just big ants. That's it. Okay, the big 6-sideds. The 12-sider is a soldier. At the end of a round, if you win a card, all your ants who won that card have to go get a drink at the pond or something, so you don't have them for the next round. But the soldier, you always get back no matter what. So then, after each round, whoever is losing, whoever has the fewest cards, turns over a card which gives them a special ability, which can involve a shoe stomping down, or a spot of honey, or flying ants, or whatever. They're just different special things. It's kind of a little bit of a catch-up mechanism. Also, if you win a lot of cards one turn, you don't have a lot of dice for the next turn. And that's pretty much it. It's silly, dice-chucking fun, dexterity for kids. I thought it was fun. It's cute. Production values are very high. So a great game for kids. Problem Picnic, Attack of the Ants. I guess adults could play it too, but I really think it's geared more towards kids.
It is very cute.
I will have to check it out. Speaking of silly dice-chucking fun, I played a game called Doughnut Drive-Thru. This is part of Grail Games' Small Box series, which I've enjoyed quite a bit. And this is, you're running a bakery, and you are trying to prepare and serve recipes of donuts and other pastries and desserts and stuff. There's a deck of these pastries, and they're all unique. Each one's different. And they all have different values that you must roll to, 1, prepare them, and to serve them. And some are easier to prepare than serve and vice versa. And some are really easy to prepare and serve, but they aren't going to be worth as many points. They're worth varying numbers of points. So you start out with a starting recipe in front of you, but you can acquire more of them, and on your turn, you're going to choose one of 4 actions, and you've got 2 little donut markers that you can place. It's a kind of a worker placement, but a very limited in scope worker placement game. You can either place 1 or 2 donuts on these action cards, and 1 allows you to draw cards. 1 will allow you to attempt to prepare a recipe. 1 will allow you to attempt to serve a recipe, and 1 will reset your action cards. So you get a bonus if you place 2 workers on a card instead of just 1. And usually it's like a +1 to a die roll, or you get to draw more cards. You still only get to keep 1, but you get to choose from more of them so you can get the more lucrative recipes. The illustrations are adorable. They're all unique, so they have these nice, cute titles of these different confectionery items. It is a little bit of risk versus reward. Do you spend that extra action token to get the rolling bonus, or do you risk your luck so that you have push your luck so that you have a second action token to spend, so you can do more things before you have to spend a turn replenishing your donut action tokens? It goes very quickly. It plays in maybe 15, 20 minutes. You continue until somebody has done 5 recipes. They may not be the most lucrative recipes, but that triggers the end game. And then you count up who has the most points. And it It's cute. It's, it's pretty luck dependent because you're basically rolling dice to see whether you have prepared or served a recipe, luck of the draw. But for such a short game, that doesn't bother me too much, and it's darn cute. So I'd recommend Doughnut Drive-Thru for an introductory action selection sort of game. Good for families.
I like how this one looks, and I'm more eager to get it to the table now that Eric has given it his typical good rating.
I smiled a lot. The cupcakes are adorable.
Everybody needs some good baked products every once in a while.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So the next one on my list is a little bit of a cheat. You told me I could only have 2, but I actually spent a week at the end of April in Southern California at the Renegade Summit playing about 30 prototypes. So that was a really great experience. We had prototypes that were sent in from all over the world, tons and tons of different designers. Some designers sent in 1, some sent in 5 or 6, and we got to go through these prototypes and look for games that we're going to be publishing in 2018. And we definitely found some winners, but it was a really great experience just to be able to sit down and see what the designers of today are really thinking, what kind of direction they're going in, what they think Renegade is looking for was also really interesting. And just getting to play a ton of really different games in all sorts of different closeness to being ready to go. Some were definitely right there, looked like they could have gone into production tomorrow, and some were just a really great idea that hadn't quite been fleshed out yet, but a lot of really different, really cool games. So that was fun. And if you want some ideas about how to make a really great prototype, Suzanne Sheldon actually posted a fantastic article this week about her experience going down there with us and looking through all these prototypes and sort of tips and tricks for what would have made it a little bit easier for us to play so many brand new games all at once. And I definitely recommend it for anybody who's thinking about being a designer or submitting prototypes to a publisher. She did a great job with that.
So when you're dealing with so many prototypes, you said 30 different games at once, do you find that the group comes to a consensus on the ones that are worth pursuing and publishing in the next year? Or are there arguments that you get somebody championing a game? I really like this one, and everybody else says, no, I don't like it at all.
I think it would really depend on the group. The people that we had there that week were all very easy to get along with, and for the most part, all the same types of gamers. So I think that if we'd had different people, we definitely would have had more disagreements, but overall, it felt like it was pretty easy to play a game and say, there's this part of it that I really like that feels new and unique, and most of us were in agreement about that almost every time. So I could see that being an issue. For us, it just didn't seem to be the case.
Well, I think, in this regard, Eric, I think after a while, especially as a publisher and such, you should be able to tell if you think a game will do well. Mm-hmm. So if, let's say I'm working with Arcane Wonders and I say, I really like this game, and they're like, yeah, none of us really like it. I'm like, all right, let's move on. Because, just because you like it, I don't think championing it, very, very rarely will a bunch of people not like a game, but it's published anyway, and it sells 1 million copies. That doesn't happen hardly ever.
Yeah.
If the pre-buzz is bad, the game's not going to do well. And I think the trap a lot of publishers fall into is they publish it anyway. Mm-hmm. And then they regret it. And then it's on discount for Christmas. Hooray!
Yeah, I do think that you have to kind of get outside of your bubble a little bit. So even though I really like heavy Euro games with worker placement, I have to realize that there are people out there who like easier abstract strategy games and everything in between. So there were definitely games like maybe party games that as a group we weren't going to necessarily enjoy as much. But I think just because all of us have played so many games, it was pretty easy for us to say, this is maybe not a game I would love and play myself, but here's something unique and special about it that we can see being marketable. And that was pretty helpful. Just having the experience of playing so many games was really useful.
Well, one thing that games can lead to is war. And that's my awkward segue to Geoff.
Nice.
time for GameTek with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
During the 1950s, the United States and the Soviet Union began to develop strategies to deal with nuclear war and deterrence. But there really wasn't a unified theory of what to do to keep the possibility of nuclear attacks as low as possible. Was overwhelming force the best approach? Was a balanced approach best? How open should countries be about their capabilities? What would stabilize the situation and what would destabilize it? Now, given the destructiveness of nuclear weapons and the development of improved delivery systems to attack anywhere in the world, these questions grew increasingly urgent. In 1960, a book was published called The Strategy of Conflict. Written by Thomas Schelling, a professor at Harvard, it was the first to try to tackle these issues using the tools of game theory, and proved tremendously influential throughout the Cold War. Schelling's focus was on how parties can work together, even when they are enemies, and even when they don't talk to each other, to find common ground and reduce tensions. The Strategy of Conflict has been called one of the most important and influential books in the history of social science, and Schelling ultimately won the Nobel Prize in Economics for it in 2005. Yet, he is not very well known. Now, Schelling passed away in December at the age of 95, and I wanted to take a little time to talk about his work. Now, the core of Schelling's worldview is that conflict is not a zero-sum game, that, if approached properly, both sides can win. Here's an excerpt from the book. In taking conflict for granted and working with an image of participants who try to win, a theory of strategy does not deny that there are common as well as conflicting interests among the participants. In fact, the richness of the subject arises from the fact that, in international affairs, there is mutual dependence as well as opposition. Pure conflict, in which the interests of two antagonists are completely opposed, is a special case. It would arise in a war of complete extermination, otherwise not even in war. For this reason, winning in a conflict does not have a strictly competitive meaning. It is not winning relative to one's adversary. It means gaining relative to one's own value system. Now, this was not a common view in the 1950s. The attitude was purely zero-sum. If the Soviet Union won, the United States lost. Schelling worked hard to show that this was not the case, that there were many areas where the parties could work for mutual benefit, and most importantly, he backed it up with math. This wasn't just a plea of, why can't we all just work together? It was a well-constructed framework in the language of game theory. Schelling actually spends a large part of the early portion of the Strategy of Conflict bemoaning the state of military studies and how when he presents math and game theory arguments to top military leaders, they simply roll their eyes. However, in the introduction to the 1980 version of the book, he says that while most of it is still relevant, this portion is not. Game theory has been fully adopted as a legitimate tool by military strategists. Now here's another quote. To study the strategy of conflict is to take the view that most conflict situations are essentially bargaining situations. They are situations in which the ability of one participant to gain his ends is dependent to an important degree on the choices or decisions that the other participant will make. The bargaining may be explicit, as one offers a concession, or it may be by tacit maneuver, as one occupies or evacuates strategic territory. Now, one of the interesting points of Schelling's work is an analysis of how two parties communicate with each other when they aren't directly communicating, the idea of signaling. In tense situations between adversary nations, communication can be limited and challenging. He presents the results to a series of experiments he conducted. In the simplest, he gives pairs of people with a challenge to coordinate their answers without communicating with each other. For example, in one, players are presented with a 4x4 grid of checkboxes and need to pick one. If both players select the same checkbox, they win, and if not, they lose. In another, both players are given a map of an area, and they need to pick a place to meet. They win if they both pick the same place. In a surprisingly large number of situations, people are able to wordlessly communicate with each other. Schelling calls these focal points. Now, he extends the idea of focal points into more complex games. In one, two military commanders are given a map and are told to draw a line showing how far they will advance. If both sides try to claim the same area, conflict results and both players lose. Otherwise, players are trying to advance as far as possible. Once again, the players, in this case military students, more often than not were able to come up with a natural stopping point that avoided conflict. Schelling also explores a game where players alternate placing 5 chips onto a map of the United States. If both players place chips into the same state, they cancel each other out. At the end of the game, players score 1 point for each chip they have remaining on the board, and also points for states where they have chips. but both players receive different points for different states. Only each player knows how much each state is worth to them. The objective for both players is to maximize their own scores, not just outscore their opponent. This is done in the experiment by giving players their score in money at the end. The players do quite well in establishing ways to signal their intentions to their opponent, and to only lose a few chips as they battle over areas that might be very valuable to one player, but not as valuable to the other. Games like this are just the tip of the iceberg in Schelling's work. He uses many similar examples to elucidate principles of communication, including threatening, trust, bargaining, bluffing, and more. In general, he advocates clarity in communication and truthfulness. A threat is only effective if your opponent believes you have the means and the will to carry it out. Being open and consistent is the key to maintaining trust and stability. Uncertainty breeds instability, and we have the games to prove it. In the final years of his life, Schelling worked on solutions for how nations can cooperate to deal with climate change. It features many of the problems he wrestled with his whole life, including limits to cooperation, cooperating with incomplete information, and uneven costs. Now, it's a little hard to get your hands on these days, but if you can get a copy, Schelling's The Strategy of Conflict is fantastic and still very relevant today, yet one that is sadly unknown by many outside of diplomatic circles. This is Geoff Engelstein with GameTek.
All right, thanks, Geoff, for that. Once again, my mind slightly went out of sync for a moment there, but I do find it interesting how the generals, kind of scoffed at game theory for war, and then later on they were like, yeah, we're using this because they did. So that's some interesting history there, Geoff. We really appreciate that. And, I kind of find this stuff fascinating to see how games have had real-life impact.
And now, hastily assembled from experiences of listeners just like you, the Dice Tower presents Tales of Gaming. Gather round, children. A good friend of mine, who shall be called Obadiah, and I invited some friends over for a game of Catan. Obadiah and I have known each other for a few years, ever since I moved to New York from the Midwest. I introduced him to board games, and he has really taken to them. We play regularly, and eventually moved into the same apartment with two of our other friends. On this night, I was setting up Catan and teaching the rules to the new players. Since he already knew the rules, Obadiah was mixing drinks for our guests. I finished the rules explanation and had the players pick their colors. As he sat down to play, Obadiah saw that he had been left the white pieces. "Why do I have white?" he asked. "That was all that is left," I replied. "But I always play with orange. Orange is my favorite color," Obadiah said. "I didn't know that. Sorry," I said. "Yes, I always play with orange. How can you not know that?" His voice rose slightly in disbelief. He continued, "You don't know my favorite color, but I bet you know Tom Vassel's favorite color. What color does Tom play with?" My face went blank with fear and shock of this accusation. I paused, but his stare forced me to speak the embarrassing truth. "Purple. Tom plays with purple." "So you know the color Tom Vassell plays with, but not the color your best friend uses?" I was speechless with shame.
Why am I being brought into arguments?
I don't know. It sounded like like not a friendship argument all of a sudden.
Yeah, he made it sound pretty mean and nasty, actually. I'm sorry. I actually like blue now.
You're tearing people apart, Tom.
Tom Vassell, tearing game groups apart.
So I always play green, and Scott Gata recently told me that he is no longer going to publish games that have the color green as a player color.
Wow, that's that's going to another level.
Yep. Taking it too far.
I will say this, though, and this is we did a top 10 things publishers need to stop doing list, me, Sam, and Z. But another one that should go on that list is Publishers, stop making a player color for a game that's the same as the pieces to that game that are not belonging to that player.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the worst.
There's hundreds of colors. Hundreds. And you're telling me, I mean, even one of my favorite games, Ticket to Ride, does this. And when I teach new people Ticket to Ride, I'm like, yeah, you're red, but these red trains, they don't have anything to do with you.
Yep.
That is confusing.
This irritates me. All right.
On another front, I saw a thread recently that was talking about colorblind friendliness and how the standard assortment of red, green, yellow, blue is not a good assortment of colors, that there should really be like black, white, and then one of the shades of blue, and then like an orange. And that should actually be the standard 4 colors that everybody uses, because it's the easiest to distinguish depending on your color aptitude.
Yeah, we're very conscious of that because several of our designers are either colorblind or have colorblind kids. So we use them to see whether or not our colors are going to make sense for them. Like Fuse, actually, King Klenko's kids are colorblind. And even though there's red and green in there as dice colors, it actually works out because of the specific red and green that we picked for it. So they're still able to play. So although I agree with that, I think there are ways to get around it because you still want to make the game aesthetically beautiful for everyone playing it and while being sensitive to colorblind issues. So there are definitely filters that you can put it through and look at what the colors are going to look at like to different people who have colorblind issues and see if it's going to work out for them. So we do that with most of our games.
See, I knew we'd get an intelligent answer with Sarah on the panel today.
Well, that's why we do these things. Speaking of intelligent answers,
Tom.
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 Hi, Tom.
Have you ever accidentally eaten one of your game pieces? Do you ever make a fort out of game boxes?
How big can a miniature be before it's not really a miniature? And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly, maybe, answer your questions.
Tom, which way to the game library?
when I visit a convention like Gen Con, says Dan, he likes to try out lots of new games. You know, he goes to the event calendar, buys tickets for these games, and then he brushes up on the rules, and he watches YouTube videos such as Watch It Played and Rada Runs Through. And Dice, he doesn't say Dice Tower, but whatever. So he learns how to play these games, which is fine. He wants to be prepared to know the games at the convention so he doesn't slow it down for other people. And he says some games have a listing of the amount of experience that they require. I think Gen Con does this. They'll say, like, no experience required, some experience, or
right,
experienced players only. I forget what the exact categories are. And he says the problem is if he signs up for a game with beginners, he finds himself where everyone at the table has no clue what the game is or even how it works. So at Gen Con, he signed up for a beginner's game of Marvel Legendary in the upper deck room. Everyone was new, and there was only one guy from Upper Deck teaching the game to 2 tables and directing people coming in for a tournament. And in half hour, he was still explaining to people how it worked, and by the time the hour time slot was up, they had only done one turn. And so he says, but if it's with experience, then he finds that people are playing it, and they understand everything, and you know, you just get destroyed by these people in an experienced game. And he mentions he replayed Arcadia Quest. One person bragged about coming in the top 3 of the recent Arcadia Quest tournament, knew all the combinations, and just whooped him. And he did not have a lot of fun for that. So what's his advice? What's the advice to doing this? I think, honestly, this is really a tough one. I hear a lot of complaints about this, where people will say, I went to learn this game, and there wasn't even a teacher there. Or they just handed us the rule book and said, learn it. And this is partially because these conventions encourage the publishers to do a lot of events. Like, I run 50 games. And you don't have people to run all these games.
Right.
Or publishers just think they can. They're like, I could teach this game to 6 tables at the same time. Not very well. Eric, didn't you try to teach Merchants of Venus to a bunch of people at the same time once?
The most I think I've done is 3 tables simultaneously.
Wow.
This was at Dice Tower Con 3.
Yeah. I think, Dice Tower Con 2, I did 3 tables. I actually gathered everyone around at one table and then left the players at that table and went to another table to help them out. And the third table actually didn't do well at all. Because no one was there to help them, it didn't go over well. If I'm using that many tables, I tend to float and try and walk around as much as I can. But I don't think I could handle much more than that. I think part of the issue with Merchant as well is I was using two different sets. I was using both the Fantasy Flight edition and the original Avalon Hill edition, and the differences between those two are enough that that needs some attention between explanation and shepherding.
This also has to do with how complicated the game is, too. Like, if you're teaching a simple game like Lanterns, you can just go boom, boom, and have that game done and going, and then move to the next table. The more complex games, I think you need one teacher per table. Mm-hmm. I wish we had a publisher on the show to help us with their thoughts.
So I've been in this exact situation for many years, and I think that it is challenging. And I think it really starts at that pull-down menu where you have to pick what you're going to do with your game at that event. And usually you only have a few choices, like it's a beginner event we're going to teach you, or people need to have experience playing this game. But really what you want is sort of somewhere in between. Like, I've played a lot of games before, but I want to learn this game from somebody who's going to teach me and be there all the time. Like, there just needs to be some more different options on those menus for what the publisher is actually going to be willing to offer. And then beyond that, when you actually get to the event, I feel like we are just really spread pretty thin sometimes, especially at events where housing is an issue. It's difficult to bring enough people to run your events and actually find places for them to stay. So it's a constant struggle. I found it was a lot easier back in the day when TCGs were the model and most big publishers were running huge events like Magic or World of Warcraft, because almost everybody showing up actually did know how to play those games. And now that we've moved towards board games that need a lot more personalized attention, some of us are still sort of back in that old day model where we could bring X number of Magic judges and it would be fine for X number of players, but now we need a much higher number of people teaching per players. So I've been thinking about this a lot as I get ready for the upcoming convention season and trying to put one demo person on every table in my booth. But then I still have this events area over here that I have to run. So it's a huge challenge. One thing that I did when I was working at Yellow that worked pretty well was more of a library model where when you came in, you picked up a game from the front desk and then you sat down and played it yourself. But if you saw that somebody else needed to play this game, then you could teach them and you would actually get a prize for doing that. And I think that worked pretty well because it encouraged people to stick around and play games a few times and then teach some other people how to do it, and didn't put a strain on us as far as finding demo crew that were there the whole time. But it's still not a perfect solution. I wish that we had a better answer for this person who mailed in, because I think it's a very valid concern.
I'll tell you, if I have the choice, I'm picking the table where I don't get taught the game very well over the table where one guy's a jerk and wipes the floor with you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would much rather sit down with my own friends and have my own great experience, even if it's a little bit slower. And gaming is all about the people that you're playing with more than anything else.
At least you got a taste of the game if you're getting the intro scenario as opposed to just getting pounded.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, if you paid for the session and you feel like you didn't get much, I think that's just cause to ask for your money back.
Yeah, I think that would be fair. And that's another thing that's kind of tricky at some of these conventions. It's hard to get space to demo games for free because the convention's paying for that space, so they want exhibitors to pay for that space as well, which is totally fair. But then sometimes those events are maybe not worth the price that they're being asked to pay for.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that upper deck event where, you didn't get, it sounds like an hour wasn't even enough time to play a full game. That should have been a much longer slot, much longer session, and really not worth the money in that particular situation.
Yeah, that's a really long time.
Yeah, it's good to set.
I'm sorry, it's a really short time for that game.
Yeah, for Legendary, for sure. I think it's good to have correct expectations going into something. And Origins, I expect to go there and play games and sit down and have a relaxed event. At Gen Con, I feel like it's turning into a little bit more of a shopping show where I go and I get a flavor of things and I buy the ones that I want and then I go home and learn them and really get a good experience in my own space.
Keith enjoyed having Suzanne on the podcast, and it got him wondering if there are any prominent women board game designers. He knows his gaming groups are pretty equally split amongst men and women, but it seems like all the game designers I see and hear talked about are all men. I'd love to learn if there are some well-respected women designers, and if there aren't, I'm curious if you have any input as to why that is, and if anything is being done to address it.
Well, first of all, here's some of the female designers, the more famous ones. Kristen Looney has a lot of games designed with Looney Labs. Susan McKinley Ross is probably best known for Quirkle. There's a lot of folks who are part of teams. Marcus and Inca Brand have done a lot of games these days for Cosmos. Carla Horger and her husband Geoff have designed some games like the racing games like Thunder Alley. Does this sound like I'm coming off with this on top of my head? Because I'm feeling good.
Yes, you're just rattling them off.
Helena Capel, the wife of Josh Capel, they've worked together to do some game designs. Liz Spain did Incredible Expeditions Quest for Atlantis. And there's more, but yeah, it's definitely a for sure. I guess I should also mention Maureen Hyrone has done a gazillion games, small abstract games, but yes, it's definitely more men designers. As to what is being done to address it, do you feel like I should round up people and make them design games? I feel the best way to address this is to make the board game hobby as welcoming to women as possible, and then they will just naturally start designing games. I believe one breeds the other.
Yep, I would definitely agree with that. And I also think that we just haven't been playing that many games as a society until just recently. And because board games are getting to be so much more popular and so many more people are entering the hobby, we see a lot more women playing games now than we did even 10 years ago. And it'll just take some time to catch up for those women who are just starting to get into the hobby now to end up designing games. So I would say in another 10 years, I'd be surprised if we didn't see a lot more women in the design crowd.
It's certainly happening. And one more to add to the list is Anne-Marie Dewitt, who works with Fireside Games. She designed Bears, I know Solo, and I know she does a lot of support work for the Castle Panic series and the other Panic games. So just there are a lot, and there's a lot of women in the administrative side as well in the industry, like Sarah right here.
Ta-da! I also think there are a lot of women developers that maybe aren't getting a lot of credit, but especially like King Klinko's wife, Carrie, she's a really fantastic developer. And a lot of other people that you just don't hear about because they're not going to be on the credits like the actual game designer is. But absolutely, there are a ton of graphic designers, lots of women artists, lots of women, like you said, on the administrative side, customer service, tons of women that I know in the industry that just aren't going to have their name in big letters on the front of a box.
Right.
Adam says he studies music education at Northern Arizona University. He graduates in a week, though, so congratulations. Actually, probably he's already graduated, considering how I get these questions up on this list here. But anyway, he says, I'm a former teacher. He says, once a teacher, always a teacher. When he says I mean Tom's a teacher. Eric's a performer, and both of you sing quite often. Well, no one said we sing quite well, but okay. So he says, I love Tom's teacher-level enthusiasm toward gaming, and I love Eric's occasional references to musical. Eric's Music Man parody of Bonagor in one of the live episodes, one of my favorite Dice Tower moments.
It was Guys and Dolls, but yes.
I thought I was in on that too, but whatever. All right, so Eric did write it, though. Anyway, he says he got hooked into gaming from another teaching friend, and other teaching friends are some of the most receptive to board games. The same goes for my friends that are into performing on stage. Like Z says, a theater major. Everywhere I look in real life and on the internet, it seems like the hobby is full of teachers and performers. Have you noticed this trend? Have you noticed any similar trends? Why do you think that is? Are teachers obsessed with rules and teaching games? Are performers obsessed with role-playing and escapism so much they find it wherever they can?
Yes.
I love where he says, thanks for taking the time to read my email, and if I hear you read this on the podcast, hopefully I don't crash my car out of excitement.
Oh, boy, Adam, don't freak out.
That would be a terrible ending to this question. Man dies listening to podcast. It was the Secret Cabal. Okay. I think sometimes when we see a bunch of people playing games, it's self-selection because the people you hang out with are the people that you play games with. And therefore, if you're hanging out with teaching and people like that, you're going to run into that same crowd. But I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of white-collar workers involved. I don't think it's just teachers. I found there's a lot of engineers, a lot of computer engineers, programmers, system managers, and all that, because they like rules. They like programs, and that's kind of what a game is. Not all teachers like games. I used to take games to teaching events, and then some of the teachers would say, "Oh, these are so hard," and that would always infuriate me. And I'd say, "Are you stupid?" Normally I wouldn't say this to people, but if your kids said that to you when you taught them a lesson, you wouldn't give them any. You would say, "No, you can learn this," and yet you have the audacity to say, "Okay, I'm sorry, I'm venting."
I'm getting you worked up.
Maybe you guys should answer it.
A similar question came up with, I think, Suzanne a few weeks ago, and it was a different set. I think they were looking for engineers. And why are all of these engineers in the hobby? I think because there's people come at it from different directions, and different aspects of the hobby are going to appeal to different groups of people. So I think you can find patterns in lots of places, but it's not necessarily indicative of the entire hobby. I think people come at this from everywhere.
I agree with the self-selection thing. I'm in a city that's not super big, but we have a huge college here, and it's an engineering school primarily. So almost all of my customers are going to be in their mid-20s, and they're engineers, and at my store that I own. So our gaming group, of course, is also composed of mostly engineers who love board games, and they love programming, and they want to have a plan that lasts over 5 or 6 turns, and they want to complete that plan, and when it's finished, they're super happy. So we play a lot of the same types of games with that group too, because they're all from the same mindset. That doesn't mean everybody who plays board games falls into that same category, but I just happen to live in a demographic where that's what I'm going to be attracting anyway. So if I lived somewhere else, then maybe they would all be artists, who knows? But I do think that people who like to have rules and to work within a framework probably do enjoy games in general.
There should be more judges in gaming then.
We have a ton of people who end up with law degrees that play Magic in my store, and they're almost always the Magic judges, but not always. But I do think that if you enjoy law in general, then you do like having those strict sets of rules, and have everybody play by the same rules is also nice.
Do they actually enjoy being called a rules lawyer at that point?
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, that's pretty good.
So Anne writes to us regarding Pandemic Legacy, and no spoilers here, but they've had some rules disagreements and some fights amongst her family about this. So, for example, no spoilers, but they spent several games debating what the term pass meant in sharing knowledge. If you're a coworker or whatever the relationship that allows you to share knowledge with another player, and the other player is the researcher, the one who can pass cards anywhere, can you either give or take a card in your turn, or can you only give on your turn? The fight revolves around whether pass means give or whether pass means give or take. Or another example is the relationships that you can give to players. Are those able to be changed between games? The rules seem to say you assign relationships when you choose your character. We started moving the stickers between player cards at the beginning of each game, but half of us think that's against the rules. Nowhere does it state that is or is not against the rules. So she's asking, did we run into issues like this? Is this indicative of a legacy system, or is this just the case with her group?
Well, okay, to be clear, she says she plays this as a mom, dad, and 2 teenage sons.
Oh, that's
so
the problem.
So it's the family. Okay, I don't have to hear anymore.
I don't think this is a legacy game issue.
I like it says they use a card as a talking stick, and only the person that has the card in the air is allowed to talk.
Yeah.
Okay, well, first of all, I actually know the answer to both those questions, so I can help you out. Pass means give, and no, you can't move stickers. But this comes down to a basic thing when it comes to rule books. If the rule book does not say you can do something, assume you can't.
Yeah.
For example, the rule does not say I can't kick the board across the room and then pour hot coffee on it. But we can just assume that we can't do that.
Right.
Now, to be fair, legacy games are really hard because they can't write all the rules in a rule book because new things will happen. And you'll say, but what about this? And it combines with this. And that was especially noticeable in Seafall. And so what I recommend or what I would do is I would pick one person. I'm not telling you who to pick. For me, it's Dad because that's me. And that person decides the answer to the rule. And if you have a problem with that, you don't get to hold the talking card.
Right. These are difficult to search for answers on Board Game Geek. I mean, these are the sorts of rules questions that you'll find a thread on. What exactly does it mean to pass a card? In most styles of games, you can find a pretty clear answer. Even the designer or the publisher coming in and saying, here is the answer. This is exactly how this should work. But with a legacy game, it's a lot more difficult because even the thread titles may be spoilers. And so you have these very vague titles of forum topics that are like, second scenario, spoilers included, need help with a particular card. And then you have to read exactly what they're talking about and look at all the spoiler text, and only the people who have played through to that point can answer the question. And it gets very tricky if you're looking for a particular piece of information. I understand the frustration for sure.
I would say with these types of rules questions, I would just do whatever is fun. Like, does it really matter if pass doesn't mean exactly what it looks like it might mean to somebody and somebody else? Just do whatever you all think is going to give you the best experience. And if that's not exactly what the designer intended, that's probably okay. Like, did he really know how your group was going to have the most fun playing this game? Probably not. So just do whatever works for you guys.
Yeah, it's a co-op anyway.
Yeah, just have fun.
All right, well, those are our questions. It's time for the top 10 list. Huzzah! Huzzah!
Oh, exciting.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
Okay, so trick-taking games. Now, this is one... I'm kind of surprised we haven't done this for a while, actually.
It's been a while, yeah.
Now, trick-taking games is an interesting thing, and I want to talk about this because we were talking a little bit about this before the show, and Sarah, you mentioned that you guys are coming out with a trick-taking game at some point.
We are. We have one coming out this summer. It's called The Fox and the Forest, and it is a two-person trick-taking game. So it's very similar to something like Bridge. It comes from the Whist family of games. So you have a trump each round, and whoever plays the highest card of that trump suit takes a trick, or whoever plays the highest of whatever suit has been started, and if there's no trump, then you take the trick. But because it's a two-player trick-taking game, it wouldn't work unless something special was going on. So in The Fox and the Forest, several of the cards that would have been face cards have special powers that change the trump suit or give you the ability to start the next trick, even if you didn't win, little things like that. And that is coming out later this summer.
You know what? I think this must be the game Z was talking to me about today, because Z mentioned a two-player trick-taking game to me today, and I asked him, what's the difference between a two-player trick-taking game and war? No, I'm serious. I'm serious. If you're both playing a card, how is that any different than let's play a card and a higher card wins or whatever?
Oh, well, we might get to that a little bit later when I talk about my number 2 favorite trick-taking game, which is also another two-player trick-taking game.
Well, good. Okay, because I never heard of that game. All right, great. So we'll get into this, but one thing I want to talk about real briefly was trick-taking games have been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
And in the 1800s, they were probably the majority of games being played, because you can play many trick-taking games with a regular deck of cards. In fact, I would say that the two main thing a deck of cards, there's three main things a deck of cards is used for: poker, solitaire, and trick-taking games, right? And also for tricks, I guess, for magicians, because they can't do something. Okay, anyway.
Back up werewolf deck.
Werewolf, that's true.
But there's a lot of commercially successful trick-taking games. However, I posit this. I think that it's extremely difficult to have a financially successful trick-taking game with any long-term viability, because I don't believe there's more than 5 that even exist. I think most trick-taking games come out. People who like trick-taking games enjoy them. They'll say this one's cool, and they'll talk about it, and they'll play it for a while, and then it fades into obscurity. There's very few evergreen trick-taking games. There's one that I can think of. It's on Eric's list.
Okay.
But for the most part, I think that they don't have that longevity, and I think partially it's because I think trick-taking as a whole is kind of being lost in our society. Like when I teach Melody games, I could teach her an Uwe Rosenberg game, and she's like, sure, bring it on. And then I'll bring out a simple trick-taking game, and it throws her for a loop. Because she didn't grow up playing trick-taking games.
Interesting.
It's not a simple thing to just pick up, right? And this happens to me. I'll go to a game group, and I'll bring out a trick-taking game, and I'm like, everyone here knows what trick-taking is, and so there's no Trump in this game or whatever, and people are like, what? What are you talking about? Trump? He's the president. I'm like, no, come on now.
Oh, no.
No, but I'm serious. I run into a lot of people who don't know anything about trick-taking games, and so I have to teach them some basics of that.
Right.
And when you don't know the basics of a trick-taking game, it plays a whole lot more slowly. When I play a trick-taking game, you give me those cards, and then I was like, I can like almost play it the whole hand in my head. Like, okay, he's going to play this, or I'm throwing this card out.
Right.
And it's second nature because I played them so many times.
You just need to know the special rules for that particular variation of a trick-taking game.
Right, and unless it's really different, they mostly play to some degree the same. But I think it's a dying thing. And I think it's really hard when someone comes to me and goes, we have a new trick-taking game. I'm like, oh, that's nice. And in the next year, it's not going to be still selling. I really think that. I might be wrong, but I'd like you to give me some. We'll do the top 10, and then you tell me how many on the list do you think have had long-term financial viability.
I do have some inside info into some of the ones on my list with that regard. So I'm excited to talk about that later.
I'm excited.
Let's do it then.
Awesome.
Number 10.
All right, I'm going to start with Stickeln, which is an Amigo card game that has sort of an extended set of cards. I think it's 0 to 15 are the numbers in this one. And at the beginning of each round, each hand, you're going to choose one of your colors as your pain suit. You do not want that color. And every card you get of that color is worth negative points toward you at face value. So if you acquire the 9 of gray, and gray is your pain suit, that's negative 9 points for you. You don't want that. But every other card you get is worth 1 point each. Not face value, but 1 point each. And you're trying to keep your head above water, not take your pain suit, and score points. Interesting game. Stickeln is my number 10.
All right. My number 10... I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Eric.
I don't know. I don't know either.
The English name is Hot Peppers.
Okay.
It's Scharfen. It's from Zoc. I don't believe they ever came out with an English version of the game, although as a trick-taking game, you don't need to. In this game, you're predicting your tricks, and you'll notice on my list that that's something I kind of like to do. I like games where you predict the tricks you're going to take, but instead, you're not predicting the number of tricks. You're going to pick the color that you think you'll get the most and least tricks of. And the cards all show their color on the back of them. So you can see what color people have, but you don't know what the numbers are. And so it's kind of an interesting thing. There's a special trump. There's special trump cards in the game and so on. But I like this whole idea of predicting tricks, and I like predicting whether I'm going to get the most of black or the least of black or what have you. I also like the hot pepper theme, even though as in every single trick-taking game ever invented, theme means nothing.
Yes.
That's very true. All right, my number 10 is a card game called Rook. And I have sort of a silly reason for really liking this game. My store that I own here in Bozeman, Montana is called Rook's Comics and Games because of the European Crow. And this game also features European Crow as its barely tiny amount of theme. But the other cool thing about this game is that, like Hot Peppers, you do a bidding phase where you're guessing how many of something you're going to get and trying to predict that, which I also agree. I really like that. But the thing that's kind of special about Rook is that all of the cards are just numbers. There's no face cards or anything. And you play the cards, and some of them count as points for when you win the trick, and some of them don't. So, for example, 5s count as points, even though they're a really low number. So you might end up accidentally having to play that into a trick and giving somebody else points and not being able to win it with that. In a lot of trick-taking games, it's only the higher number cards that are worth points. So in this one, the points are sort of shuffled throughout the numbers in the different suits. So it makes the actual playing of the tricks a little bit different, and really you have to think about it a lot to be able to get points into your hand and not give points away. So that is Rook.
All right, history lesson time, boys and girls. In the 80s, many people may not notice, but if you were involved with church at all, or there was a very big backlash against playing cards in general.
Mm-hmm,
mostly because playing cards were felt to be, they led to gambling. What do you do with playing cards? You play poker and gambling games. All right, so you didn't want to have a deck of cards. Thankfully, Bill Gates single-handedly turned that around by inventing something called Windows, which had 2 games on it, one Minesweeper and the other Solitaire. Yep. And so all these people who were against the deck of cards had only 2 games to play, and they kept playing Solitaire. And after a while, people were like, if you're playing Solitaire on a computer, why is it wrong to play with a deck of cards? So anyway, all these people still want to play card games, but they can't be playing with the filthy deck of cards. So Rook is extremely popular in Christian circles, or at least it was in the 80s and 90s. My in-laws have a religion based around Rook, I found out. Because they were like, hey, do you want to play Rook? And I was like, sure, I'll play a new game. I didn't realize it was serious, Yakuza cut off your pinky finger thing. My father-in-law actually locked my when they first got married. She was his partner, and she messed up. So he was so mad, he went home and locked her out of the house.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and you laugh, but I've met people who play Rook, and they're insane. Insane, I tell you. It's just a game.
So did you know that this actually was invented in 1906 by the Mennonites? It really was created with the goal of avoiding gambling. That's why there are no face cards. So it wasn't just in the 80s. It lasted all the way until the 80s even.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going with the 80s because that's what I was.
Okay, that's
so I
fair.
remember that. But this game boggles my mind. I still remember in college they had a Rook tournament, and Laura refused to be my partner because I wasn't good enough. And I'm like, what? She's not like that in any other game in existence. Well, maybe Lost Cities. But with Rook, you play to win. No other excuse. That's why it's not on my list.
That's fair. I had no idea it was so vicious.
Number 9.
Well, my version of vicious is my number 9. That's Euchre. I grew up in the Midwest in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and we played a lot of this in theater circles. Euchre is played with a shortened deck. The version I know is 9 all the way through the face cards and the ace. And it's a partnership game. You will bid for how many tricks you're going to take of the, I think it's 5. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's 5 tricks in a hand. And you are naming trump if you win the bid. And the way that the card ranking is very strange. The highest ranking card is going to be the jack of the trump suit. That's called the right bower. And then the other jack of the same color is the left bower. And the second ranking card, then it goes ace, king, queen, etc. Then you simply play out the tricks, and you're counting up how many tricks your team has won, and you're racing to a certain number of points to win. Once you're comfortable with the game, it becomes sort of second nature, and it's much more of a social time killer experience. But I played a lot of Euchre growing up. It's my number 9.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the way this list is going to be, right? I played a lot of this growing up because there's just a lot of that with trick-taking games for many of us. My number 9 is the newest game on my list, and that's Sponsee. This is from Mind Fitness Games. Just played this one like last month. This is another game where you're bidding on all kinds of stuff. You're bidding on, I'm going to take the most tricks. I'm going to take a certain number of cards. And when I first saw it, I thought, this looks a little too convoluted for me. But it actually played out pretty well. You can even bid on, Eric says he's going to take the most tricks. I'm predicting he's going to fail.
It's like wits and wagers.
Yeah, this game is not as smooth as another game that's on mine and Eric's list, actually. But it plays very similar to that. I think there's more choices than in Sponsee. There's like a whole pile of things that you can bet on, and you're like actually betting money. You put a coin on it, and then if you succeed, you get a certain amount back depending on how difficult they think the bet is to be. Like, I'm not going to take any of the highest cards. Like, I think the highest cards are 15 or whatever. I'm not going to take any of those. Well, that might be easy. That might be harder to do than saying I'm not going to take any of something else or whatever. And I enjoyed that. I like the different odds of betting on this. That's Sponsee.
All right. My number 9 is Spades. And in this trick-taking game, spades are always the trump, which is a little bit different. And the thing I like about spades is that it's actually very similar to bridge, and that's because it was created in the 1930s as a game that a lot of military people played during World War II. And bridge is actually a pretty complicated game. You want to play it with the same people over and over again who really know all of the ways the bidding works and all the special rules. So spades was actually designed as a simplified version of bridge. And because I really enjoy playing bridge, spades also fits into that group for me. And it is kind of nice. You always know that spades are going to be the trump, so you can kind of cut that part of it out and jump into the game a little bit faster. So that is my number 9.
Number 8.
Frank's Zoo is my number 8, and it's a little bit different from a lot of these other trick-taking games. In fact, there are no numbers on these cards. You're playing with animals, and there's a whole hierarchy of animals that beat other animals, and it's also a ladder-style game, which is sort of an offshoot of basic trick-taking, where you may be playing multiple cards in a particular round, a particular hand, or a trick, and you're trying to get rid of your cards more quickly than your opponents. And then there's a shifting partnership aspect that is kind of interesting as well. As you rank people's scores, you may end up with a different partner than you had before in Frank's Zoo. So I like all the twists and turns that the animals add to Frank's Zoo, my number 8.
I'm not sure. I think Frank's Zoo's an okay game. I'm not sure I feel like a ladder climbing game is an offshoot of trick taking. I feel like it's its own thing. I think there's one exception that crosses both genres. Is it coming up? Yes. I think there's that one exception, but I think for the most part, there's between Lexio and all these other, in those games you're just trying to get rid of the cards in your hand. In a trick-taking game you are trying to win cards. It's a very different thing.
Oh, no, in Frank's Zoo, you are trying to win cards as well. At least from the second round forward, you're earning point cards, and it's important which cards you take and whether you got a mouse versus lions and all that stuff. There's a whole hedgehogs.
Well, I'm not arguing it's Frank's Zoo. I'm just saying you said that ladder climbing was an offshoot of trick taking, and I wanted to make it clear to our audience that you were wrong.
Sure. It is important whether you won a trick because you then get the lead. I mean, it has a lot of the same structures in the ladder climbing games as well.
They're not the same, man.
Yeah, they're similar.
They're both cards, yes.
Yeah.
I found this difficult. I actually did some research when you asked me to be on this episode about what really a trick-taking game was. And it does seem like there are a lot of card games that people thought were trick-taking games, but then I looked into them a little bit more closely and really just aren't. Because they're either card sloughing games where you're trying to get rid of all the cards in your hand, or ladder games. There are a lot of games that are so close, but I agree, I just wouldn't quite put them into the trick-taking category.
No, that's fine. You can gang up on me. It's okay.
All right. My next one is Trump Tricks Games. This came out from Phalanx Games, of all people, co-published with Mayfair Games, and Gunter Burkhardt did it. He does a lot more of the he does some complex Euro games. But the main thing about Trump Tricks Games that I liked was in each one, the cards that you won, the tricks that you won each round, were your hand for the next round.
Yep.
Which I thought was a really unique, interesting thing. And that's my number 8, even though, yes.
My number 8 is one that I had not heard of until I started doing research for this episode, but it is a really cool, really different game. It's called Trucco, and it is similar to a lot of other bridge-style games, and it is from Spain originally, but it is a little different because instead of bidding using special terms to give your partner clues, you actually are using facial cues. So you are allowed to wink or poke or sort of move your arms in funny ways or whatever you want to do to give your partner clues about what cards you have in your hand during the bidding phase. So it's sort of a silly party social game mixed with a trick-taking game, and it really is a lot of fun to play. It's a little bit simple. You only have 3 cards per hand, and then the rest of it plays mostly like other trick-taking games you've played. But that addition of more social interaction, I think, is very cool, because that's why we all sit down to play games, and sometimes I feel like I at least get lost in the analyzing and the mathing out and the counting of the cards, but forcing you to have a partner and interact in this kind of a silly way just makes it a lot more fun. So that is my number 8. It's called Trucco.
Number 7.
Number 7 is one of the straightforward games with a standard deck of cards, and that's hearts. Of course, the trick here is that you don't want hearts. They're negative points for you, as well as the 13-point Queen of Spades. You don't want that either, unless you want them all, and that's the real trick. Is that you can shoot the moon by collecting all of those cards, and there's always that chance as somebody starts taking hearts, and you start watching them going, wait a minute, if they go for this, if they start shooting the moon, can we stop them? And there's always that tipping point of, well, once I go for it, can they stop me? That tension really makes hearts for me, and it's why it's my number 7.
My number 7 is Gangsta. It's actually spelled Gangsta. It's about gangsters, though, so I'm not really sure why it's called Gangsta. But anyway, it's about different gangsters. And in this game, when you win a trick, it's your typical trick-taking game. There's a few minor things, like you can play 2 cards of the same number to win it. Like 2 sevens becomes a 14. But then you are down 1 card, so at the end you don't have cards to play in the final tricks. But anyway, when you play these cards and when you win a trick, you take the cards and you put them in this grid. And based on how you put them in the grid, points are going to be scored. So like if you put 3 of the same number next to each other, that's going to score you a certain number of points. So the cards, as you play them, are worth different values based on the cards that are in the grid already. So if there's 2 4s in the grid, a 4 could be pretty valuable as a point card. So I don't necessarily want to throw that to Eric if he's going to win the trick. And I really, really enjoy this game. In fact, we considered it for Dice Tower Essentials. Arcane Wonders did not like it as much as I did, but I really, really enjoyed this trick-taking game, Gangsta.
My number 7 is Hearts as well. And I completely agree with Eric. I think that the fun of Hearts is that it's actually sometimes a push your luck game. And being able to shoot the moon and that risk of trying to get every single trick after that point is just really invigorating. And if it weren't for that part, it would just be a pretty generic, boring trick-taking game. But the push your luck part of it is just great. So that is my number 7. It's Hearts.
Hearts is one I like a lot. Probably is my number 11, maybe. I personally prefer to play with the Jack of Clubs being a negative 10-point card.
Ooh, interesting. I have not played it that way because on Microsoft Windows, the version that exists in that does not have that as a rule. But I basically played Hearts all the time because I think it was maybe the third game that they put on Windows.
Yes.
That's right. That's where I played it a lot too, but that's where I learned it. Maybe they've changed it, but they definitely had that rule on one of those early games, and I was like, ooh, that's interesting. Let's play it that way. And it's just an interesting way. But yeah, I always try to shoot the moon. Even, why not?
Nice.
Number 6.
My number 6 is probably the newest of the set for me, and that's Trick of the Rails, which uses the trick-taking as more of a side mechanism toward an area majority and stock style game. You're playing cards just as normal, but then whoever wins the trick is going to add stock to a train line or gain stock into their pile, and those who didn't win the trick get the card they played into their personal array of stock or into a building track toward a particular train line. And adding trick-taking as a mechanism that works its way into further mechanisms, I think is fascinating. It's a really neat game. Trick of the Rails, my number 6.
Trick of the Rails is an interesting game, that's for sure. I think it's the most unique game on this list. However, I really like this next game called Eternity. This is from BlackRock Games. And in this game, you are trying to determine how many tricks you're trying to win. Like you're going to sometimes use a card to get a tree that basically makes your cards score points. It's hard for me to explain this one without actually showing it being played. You can go online. Z Garcia did a review of this one. But it felt very original, and especially I also worked well with 3 players, which is something I look for in a trick-taking game. Beautiful artwork, the different trees, and so you're trying to get these cards and score them, but sometimes you have to give up taking a trick so that you can then score the cards you've already taken. So anyway, that's Eternity.
Nice. My number 6 is the Dwarf King. And this is a game from Yellow, and I played it a lot when I worked there, and I really enjoy it because it's a pretty basic trick-taking game, but every round you have what's called a contract that changes the rules for that round. So it might say something about getting negative points for taking the trick or getting positive points for having a certain type of card in your hand at the end of it. And having these different contracts just adds a little bit more variety to the gameplay, so you're not doing the same thing for several rounds. Every round is a little bit unique. And then many of the cards also have special abilities, and because they're unique in the deck, when you play that card and do its ability, something crazy happens. Like the dragon, you could play these cards even if it isn't the required suit. So they just let you break the rules, which is fun. And I also like the artwork in it. It's very cheesy fantasy style, but it's cute and I like it. Though that is my number 6. It's the Dwarf King.
The Dwarf King was on my short list. I really like it. It just dropped down slightly because it can be incredibly random sometimes. Super fun.
Yes. Yeah, it is very random. If you're looking for an experience where you probably won't have the same person win every single time because they're really good at trick-taking games, this is a good one to throw into the mix. But I agree. If you want to have the best person win every time, this is not the game for that.
Number 5.
My number 5 is another newish game on the list. It's from Mike Fitzgerald. It's called Diamonds from Stronghold Games. And this is another one where the trick-taking is not the only aspect of this, because each suit has a special power that allows you to acquire diamonds, little, acrylic crystal things that can either be placed in front of your vault or behind your vault, then they eventually score points. So by winning tricks, you get to trigger these abilities more often, but it's not the only aspect. You have to use the cards and the suits you have to move these gems around the table, and I think it's a fascinating exercise. Diamonds, my number 5.
My number 5 is Nyet. N-Y-E-T. This means no, of course. This is a game with a Russian theme, although the Russian dressed animals. This is from Yellow. I like this game a lot because in this game, before you start each round, you are choosing what the trump is, what the rule. You're basically choosing the rules for each round ahead of time. I wish there was a little bit faster of a way to do it. It slows the game down slightly, If it didn't, I think it might be actually my top 2. That's how much I like the game. But the cards are beautiful. It's basically a trick-taking game, like I said, but at the beginning, players are slowly determining what the rules of that round are going to be, and I find that entertaining.
My number 5 is Pinochle, which I was kind of surprised that I had not played this game before. Just recently, I was talking to one of my friends, and he agreed to teach it to me. And I was looking through all of these different rules online to try and figure out exactly how this game is played before we played it. And it is amazing how much variability there is in the different rule sets that I found. And I think part of that is just because it's a very old trick-taking game, and that's true with a lot of these other ones as well. We were talking about that with Hearts and some of these other games. You can play them in lots of different ways, and Pinochle seemed to be the most variable of the ones that I found. But it made my list because it has this cool thing where, in addition to the regular trick-taking rules overall, you always do this thing before you start playing your hand called Melding, which is revealing parts of your hand and showing some of the cards that you have, but you get a lot of points for doing that. So if you have certain sets like doubles or runs, those types of things, if you show those to people, then you'll get a ton of points. And then there's also a bidding phase as well. But because you have to balance giving away some of the information about what you have in your hand versus getting those points, it just adds another layer to the whole game. So I really enjoyed playing Pinochle the last couple of weeks and really appreciate my friends who helped teach me. So yeah, that is my number 5 was Pinochle.
That's one I've never played.
Really? You should try it. It was very cool.
Yeah.
I liked it.
It took me a long time to figure out how to spell it. I actually thought it was like Peaknucle, something like that.
Yeah,
that's step 1. Learn to play.
Yeah.
Number 4.
My number 4, the version I have, is known as Die Sieben Siegel, which is the 7 seals. It's appeared in several versions. The most current one is known as Slough Off. And this one is one where you have to predict which tricks you're going to take. But you have to be very precise. It's not just, I think I'm going to take 3 tricks. It's that I think I'm going to take 2 blue tricks and 1 red trick. And if you are wrong, there are penalties. And you have to get rid of the seals as you take the tricks. And if you take too many or you don't take enough, bad things happen. So it's a very tough prediction-style trick-taking game. Die Sieben Siegel, my number 4.
My number 4, and I don't believe I'm alone on this one, is also Diamonds, which Eric mentioned for number 5. Anyone else pick this for the number 4?
It was me. I love this game. I'm a sucker for all the little bits in it.
Well, you know what? It also, the thing about this game that I think is really good is that you play a lot of trick-taking games nowadays, new ones that come out, and it's like, oh, what's the gimmick? Okay, that's the gimmick. Great. That's fun. That's interesting. That's unique, and it's a little esoteric. But Diamonds felt like this was a game that's always existed. It felt like a classic when I first played it. I think Mike did a really good job putting it together and making it feel like it's a game that came out a long time ago.
Yeah, I was very surprised as well because it seems so obvious and it was so smooth and there are so few rules, but it all works really well together. It was a fabulous game.
Number 3.
Moving on to number 3, I'm going to channel Mary Prasad now and mention Tichu, which is also a ladder climbing game, but it also has very strong, straight-up trick-taking involved. Because it's a partnership game, you are trying to acquire cards that are worth points, and if none of the special conditions happen, you're just trying to earn points for, I think it's the 10s and 5s, and then there are some special cards that are worth points. But also, you are trying to get rid of your cards first. And you're essentially bidding often that you are going to be the first one to go out by calling Tichu. There's also special cards that have special abilities and allow you to pass the lead to your partner or over play somebody else. It's a complex game. I tried teaching this to my parents once and it didn't go well. But once you are comfortable with it, there's a lot of subtlety, and it always makes me nervous when I play it, but it's a very strong candidate for this list. My number 3 is Tichu.
Now, back at the beginning when we talked about Rook and the mean nastiness that can come out of Rook, also can happen in this game.
Yep.
It's actually not so mean and nasty per se, but I'm telling you, people be like, hey, we're going to play Teach You. Do you know how to play? And you're like, well, not really. And they've already walked away.
Yeah. Unless you know how to play, they don't want you as a partner.
they take it so seriously. I look over like, hey guys, are they having fun over there? I can't tell. They're smiling. But that's the same smile my mom had right before I was in humongous trouble.
Oh, no.
I've seen that smile before. But yes, Teach You is the one ladder climbing game, which I think is actually a straight up trick taking game. But all right, My number 3 is the Bottle Imp. This is one of my favorite 3-player trick taking games, where you had if you had this bottle, the genie would do whatever you wanted, but then when you died, you gave up your soul. However, you could get rid of the bottle if someone bought it from you for a cheaper price. So once it went down to a penny, well, you're kind of stuck. And that was kind of the way the story worked. But that's the way this game works. You're playing tricks, and low numbers are great. They win tricks. However, you also get the bottle, and if you have the bottle at the end of a round, you get nothing. So you have to know when to play the cards the right time. I really like it. There's 3 different colors, but there's only one of each number. So like the 3 is blue, and the 4 is yellow, and the 5 is blue, and I don't remember what they all are. But it's very interesting and unique, very simple actually. One of my favorite trick-taking games, the Bottle Imp.
I recently heard about this game and have really been wanting to play it, but I don't have a copy of it. So next time I see you, we should play this game together, because I would love to learn it. Looks fantastic. So my number 3 is Niet. Just like Tom talked about earlier, this is a great game where you have this phase before where you are picking the conditions for that round. And I really like that because it feels like a bidding phase, but it does something really different. And I think that uniqueness is very cool. I was actually working at Yellow as we were about to publish this game. So a little bit of fun inside info about it. One of the characters has a sucker in his mouth, and that originally was actually going to be a cigarette, and I requested that they change it for the American audience. So if you think I was totally wrong about that, you should let me know after the show.
How dare you ruin the artist's original vision?
Exactly. But I think the sucker turned out very cute, so I was happy with it.
Well, that's better than what they did there was an auto place up north called Manny, Mo, and Jack. And Jack had a big cigar in his mouth. And then they decided to take that out. And then he just had a big cold sore there. And I was like, well,
Oh, no.
I'd put the cigar back in, guys.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's worse, for sure.
Number 2.
My number 2 is called Moo, and you can find this in a couple of different collections of games, Moo and More and Moo and Much More. In Moo, your partner is constantly changing from round to round. Whoever wins the bid is going to pick one partner to work with them and help them achieve their goal for that particular round, and then everybody else is fighting against them. And it's complex in that way. There's these shifting alliances. Who am I fighting for? Am I really fighting for them? Like if the person who wins the bid can choose someone who may not actually be helping them, and it may not be in their best interest to choose that particular player. It's tricky. Well, yes, it is a trick-taking game. I like it a lot, but it makes my brain hurt. It's Moo, my number 2.
What about and More?
No, I don't care about the More. I just want the Moo.
All right, my number 2 is Slough Off, which is a terrible name. I really don't like that name. I think it's called several things. That Zing was one name of it, but Die Steven Seagal. Actually, that's not what it's called, but everyone I know has called it Die Steven Seagal. It's the 7 Seals.
Yeah.
But again, this to me is the perfect. You're going to say what tricks. You're going to say exactly what tricks you're going to take. I love that concept. I'm going to take 2 blue tricks and a red trick. And then there's one person who's like, I'm just going to ruin everyone else's day this time. and I like that possibility is there. It's just a very fun, easygoing trick-taking game. I've been enjoying this one for well over a decade. So Slough Off is the current weirdly named version of this, but it's a great game.
Neat. My number 2 is a trick-taking game that is very, very old. And I actually learned it while I was traveling around Europe during my honeymoon, and it is called Piquet. And it's a 2-player trick-taking game, which was handy when it was just me and my husband traveling. And it is you play it in 3 phases. So first you deal the cards, and then the first phase is exchanging. So one player will exchange up to 5 cards from their hand with 5 face-down cards that have been dealt into the middle of the board. Then the next player will exchange up to 3 cards with 3 separate face-down cards that are on the board as well. After you've done that exchange, then you can declare some of your special sets or runs that you have, and you can get quite a few points for doing that. If you have, say, 3 aces, then you would want to declare that, because if the next person has, say, 3 keens, then those would not be as good, so they won't get points for them. So you go back and forth declaring things that you have in your hand, giving a lot of information away to your opponent for the trick-taking phase that happens right after that. So I don't think that the trick-taking phase feels like war in this game, because there are those 8 cards that are removed that you know some of them but not all of them, so you don't always know what your opponent's going to be able to play. So you play that trick-taking phase and you'll get some points for the tricks that you take, and then there are a few things like whoever takes the most tricks gets a few points, but really the fun of the game is in deciding what to exchange and then what to declare, and then knowing what your opponent has or not quite knowing and being able to play the tricks at the right time. So it's a unique game that I'm surprised I haven't heard of anybody else playing it, but I've played it for 10 years now, and it is Piquet. That's my number 2.
This is pretty high on your list. I might have to hunt this one down and try it.
Well, you just play it with a regular...
After we play...
We'll
play the Bottle Imp, and then we'll play Piquet.
Oh, that's perfect. Yes, I like that. We'll need one more person to play Bottle Imp, and then you and I can play Piquet.
And then you just kick him out. That's nice.
No, we'll play with Eric, and then we'll be like, Eric,
you must leave now.
That's right.
Goodbye.
Well, luckily...
Go find something else to do.
Yes, it is very fast, so we can play while you're watching, and you won't be too sad. How about that?
Oh, okay. That'll work.
Nice.
And finally, number 1.
My number 1 is my number 1, not necessarily because it's the most intricate trick-taking game, but because I like it so much and I have played it so much, and that is most commonly known as Relationship Tightrope, but I have Drochsilocht, which is the original German version. I think there's also a yin-yang version that's more recent. In this game, you are trying to balance the sticks that you take. If you win the trick with the high card, you're going to get a certain number of blue sticks. And if you, lose the trick with the lowest card, you're going to get a certain number of red sticks. The two cancel each other out. The goal is to end the round with 0 sticks in front of you. But each round, each trick, is a differing number of points. So you can't necessarily rely on the fact that you're going to be able to counteract your 3 blue sticks by winning the number 3 red trick, because sometimes a round is worth 0 red sticks, and sometimes it's going to be worth 9 red sticks. And trying to puzzle out how you're going to win, which round you want to try and win, at what time is half the fun of Relationship Tightrope, Drochsilocht, or Yin Yang. Well, however you say it, it's my number 1.
Yeah, this is another one that made my short list. I really enjoy it. But my number 1 is the greatest trick-taking game of all time.
All time.
And that is David and Goliath. Still waiting for someone to pick this one up in America, because Playroom Entertainment had it, but I don't believe they have it any longer. And this is a game in which it works just as well with 3 all the way up to 6 players, which is a very weird thing for trick-taking. And you play the cards. Whoever plays the highest card wins all the cards except their own. That one is won by the person who plays the lowest card, David. And you are trying to only get 2 cards of each color if possible, because then they're worth the numbers on the cards, like 17 and 15. That's a lot of points. But if you get 3 purple cards, now they're only worth 1 point each. Very intriguing, very tactical. It's a little more chaotic with 6, but I still really, really, really love this game, David and Goliath. Someone reprint this.
Hint, hint.
I don't hint. I'm always very, very open.
No, that's not a hint. It's pretty overt.
I do appreciate trick-taking games, or really any type of games that have a lot of different number of players that they work well with. And I think that's one thing that is kind of tricky with trick-taking games, is that most of them play 4 players, ideally. So having one that goes up to 6 is quite nice. So my number 1 is Bridge, and I think it's really because I've been playing this since I was a really little kid. I loved playing this with my grandmother. It was one of the games that really it got me excited about playing games, and I think there's a lot of really cool, deep strategy in this, and there's a reason why people play it every week with their same friends forever and ever, because there's just so much to think about, and the bidding part of the process is very cool. If you haven't played Bridge before, it is a pretty traditional trick-taking game like all these other ones we've talked about, but the bidding phase at the beginning, you use a lot of terminology that you have to learn to give your partner clues about what is in your hand, and that helps them decide whether or not they should keep bidding. And once you're done with that bidding process, the winning team, one person will actually put their hand down as a dummy hand, so everyone gets to see those cards, and then the person who won the bid will play using both the hands on their cards and the dummy cards on the board. So that is something that I don't see in a lot of more modern trick-taking games. I'm not really sure why. Maybe because you don't want to have that one person just step out for a round. But it's kind of nice when you're doing it as a family game, because then the one person can either still watch and enjoy the game, or go and get everybody drinks or whatever, have a little break. So I found that when you're playing games with your family, that's actually kind of nice to get a break every once in a while. So that is my number 1, mostly for nostalgic reasons, but I do believe it's a really fantastic game. It is Bridge.
Well, I can't play any game that has a dummy player because I don't want to play any game that has 2 dummies.
Oh, no.
Bridge has always fascinated me as a concept, because it's sort of like the chess of trick-taking games, because there are some people who this is a lifestyle game for them. And my mom used to teach classes in Bridge, and I know there's a lot of terminology to learn. There's the whole bidding process and conventions that you're supposed to learn. But if everybody knows the same conventions, why aren't you just table talking the whole thing?
It is a little bit silly, but I think...
No one has ever been able to explain that to me.
I think it's because when you know all of those terms, you're just part of the club, and it feels the same as table talking. And
that's snobbery.
You disagree? I think it's kind of cool.
That's snobbery.
It's maybe snobbery. That's true.
It's a secret handshake.
It is. And it is kind of silly. I think you could probably do it with table talking with, let's say you were teaching kids how to play, but there are some restrictions. You don't get to tell your partner everything. You only get to tell them certain things, and so these common restrictions do make it a little bit more interesting. But mostly it's probably just snobbery.
All right, let's quick go over the people's choice for the best trick-taking games. Number 10, Euchre. Number 9, Rook. There you go. 8, David and Goliath. Huzzah. 7, Bridge. 6, Wizard. None of us said that. I know that's one of Z's favorite trick-taking games. 5, Tichu. 4, Spades. 3, Niet. That's pretty high up there, actually.
Yeah.
2, Hearts. And 1, Diamonds. All right, Sarah, enlighten us.
So...
about the
one little piece of information I do have is that I was working at Yellow when Yet came out, and it had surprisingly strong sales. And not only right after the release, but it had a much longer tail than a lot of the other games that we had at the time. So I was very surprised by that. I don't feel like we did anything particularly special to make that happen. It's possible that the artwork in that game is just super, super fantastic, and that was...
It was the lollipop.
It was probably the lollipop, yeah.
Yeah, I think
that's really the answer.
You made the difference between... No, I actually have the artwork of Niet up on my walls at my house because I really like that game.
I believe it.
The artwork there. So I think that would be initial sales. Well, but I still would maintain that I think that it's a very rare thing.
I would agree with that.
If a company comes to me and they say, I'm going to make a trick-taking game, I'm like, well, that's great, but you better make a game that gets you some money.
Yeah. Well, the other problem with trick-taking games, to be honest, is that they're really cheap to make and they're really cheap to sell. So even if you sell a billion copies, you're not going to make a ton of money on it, to be fair. And not that you spent a lot of money on it either. So it's probably still fine to do it, but it's never going to be your flagship product because there's only a $10 or $20 game.
Well, there you go, folks. Trick-taking games. It's something that's been long overdue for us to talk about. But I'm always interested. There's so many out there to take a look at. And so many, I mean, look how many were in the People's Choice Top 10 that could be played with just a deck of cards. Anywho, Sarah, thanks so much for coming on the show and setting me straight about trick-taking games.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was super fun.
All right, and people will be able to see you at different conventions, I'm sure, over the course of this year. Which one will you be at next?
The next thing I'm going to is actually the ACD Open House. It's a distributor open house for retailers only. I will be there in Madison, Wisconsin. But while I'm there, I'm going to I'm Bored, which is a fantastic local retailer. So if you're in the Madison, Wisconsin area, please stop by for that. But then the next big convention I'm going to is Origins. We have teams going to Geekway to the West and BGG Spring, but I will not personally be at either of them, unfortunately. But I will be at Origins, and I would love to meet anybody who wants to come by the booth.
And he'll probably make you come and do the demos on our live feed. So.
Oh, yes. I have some preview games that I cannot wait to come and show you. It's going to be really fun. They'll actually be airshipped straight to the show, so it'll be the first time I even get to see them.
Nice.
All right, nifty. All right, well, thanks so much. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for being patient while I was gone. I will try not to leave too much more. It will be Eric's turn next.
Oh, wait, what?
No, I don't want you to leave, Eric. I can't run the show without you. All right. Well, anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Sara Erickson.
And I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode number 505 was recorded on May 10th, 2017. Coming up next week, Tom and I break down the recent flood of escape games. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom and me, with production assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Seary. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Cthulhu's Senior Year High School Annual is provided by the Yearbook of Madness. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at DiceTower@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Gamers Anonymous, Board Game Corner, the Push Your Luck Podcast, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, the Family Gamers, the Geek All-Stars, Dukes of Dice, Our Turn, and Board Game Breakfast at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. I'm just imagining this scenario where we're all playing a game happily together and then you make me leave.
Oh, I'm imagining that too.
That's
It's pretty cool. When it's done, I'll be like, I'm sorry, and I'm just going to get up and move your chair.
I'm in the hallway looking through a window, sadly. Bye.
Yeah, you could watch.
From out there.
How do you like them apples? Oh, rough.